Welcome to another episode of Inspire People, Impact Lives. I'm your host, Josh Kosnick, Managing Partner, Northwestern Mutual. And today we have special guest Scott Michel, whose better half, Katie, was on our show last week that you guys all, and hopefully you all listened. And he's Managing Partner of Orange Shoe Personal Fitness. Scott, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me.
You bet. So it's great to get to talk to the other half today, right? Get your perspective. She gave us some warning. We'll see how accurate she was in description and whatnot, but it'll be fun either way. But before we dive in, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, so I grew up about 90 minutes outside of town here, small area, Ithaca, Wisconsin. Had 30 kids graduate my class, so I know how to read and write. And some people like slow down their speaking with me, but you know, it was a great upbringing. Learned how to grow on a dairy farm, knew how to work really hard, and I think those skill sets have served us both well, you know.
So both farm kids.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Right.
A lot of respect for farmers and a lot of respect for teachers because I was a teacher for 9 months before my kindergarten class ate me up.
So you were a kindergartner teacher.
I was.
Wow. 9 months you made it.
9 months. So mad respect for teachers.
And so did you jump right into personal fitness right after that?
My background was I went up to lacrosse for exercise sports science and then had a teaching degree. Taught a 60% position in Sauk Prairie. And Orange Shoe was opening up and, you know, had bills to pay. And I was like, I'm certified to train, so let's explore this. And it allowed me to still teach. It was just a different arena of teaching.
Yeah.
So just kind of made that transition from education to fitness.
To fitness education, right?
Absolutely.
And now franchise education.
Yes. Always learning. So we took over the entire organization 4 years ago. And, you know, we had 6 locations throughout the Milwaukee, Chicago, Madison area. And we just signed our 11th location 2 days ago.
That's awesome.
So definitely a learning curve. But I think that's what keeps things interesting is always learning something new.
No, absolutely. So from going to the teaching aspect to the fitness aspect, was there anything in there other than bills to pay that really got you more towards that affinity versus possibly going up the chain of, hey, I don't want to deal with kindergartners, so I'm going to go deal with high schoolers. But you just said, no, I'm not even going to go that way. I'm just going to alter my path really early on in life. Was there anything else other than paying bills that really tipped you towards that?
I think, and I have to be careful with how I phrase this, but like, I'll never forget the time when I was student teaching and my cooperating teacher said, hey, do you want to know how much you're going to make 30 years from now? I was like, what? And it didn't matter if I showed up early, stayed late. And I think that's a true tragedy in that industry is that you have people who are passionate, who give way more, but the compensation model only rewards based off tenure and things of this nature.
Right.
So that just didn't resonate with me. So I knew I wanted to do something entrepreneurial. My parents were dairy farmers. And when Orange Shoe opened up, we had very candid conversations with the owner and said, if we're not owning this, we'll work for every opportunity that we are given. But if we're not owning this in a couple of years, we're out. We're going to do something else entrepreneurial. And that aligned with where he wanted to take the company.
Oh, that's great. And that was great for you guys to be open and honest because that way you all were moving towards the same target.
Absolutely. I think that's one thing with new people coming into the organization is know what you want and be willing to work for it.
Now, what if someone said that to you right now?
I would say, hey, you remind me of somebody I know. But to be able to earn people's respect, you need to be able to produce on the floor as well and be able to learn that aspect of the business so you're not leading from an ivory tower. You can relate to your team. You know how to develop your team. So absolutely. We have the gentleman who is opening up the new Chicago location. Parents immigrated from Pakistan and, he saw how hard his parents worked. He replicated that in the Chicago studio and said, I want to do more. And we're like, that's awesome, Taha. Like, let's figure out a way to be able to partner and get you into your own studio. Yeah. So it's cool to be able to see that people are still willing to put in the work and earn those opportunities.
Yeah. That is awesome. And be able to see them flourish and build their own, not necessarily a brand in your instance, but like their own style of branding.
Yeah. I mean, everybody's a unique individual, and it's one of those things that Orange Shoe, we always look at the diversity of the team, and that's going to make us stronger, because client A might not necessarily relate to me, and that's okay. But I'm going to have other team members that are different than me, but we still operate under the same kind of framework.
No, that is great perspective, is you're giving boundaries essentially for relationships, and the diversity of that's going to help it and help you expand your boundaries as well, because it expands your thinking.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's something that our industry has probably struggled with a little bit, that corporate does everything, and you have this super motivated, well-educated person coming out of school, and their first job is like, no, you're going to do corporate's programming. And it's like, well, no, let's give you frameworks so you can make educated decisions on your own. And because I don't want to micromanage you, I want to empower you to be able to make those game time decisions, right?
Yep, exactly. So we were talking before we got on recording about how you were a franchisee and now a franchisor. Mm-hmm. So how has that experience really helped you guys with your franchisees now? I mean, there's so much that I'm sure you've learned in that aspect, but like, I was just thinking about relating to this new franchisee. How do you guys go about educating and preparing your new franchisees based on your own experiences being one?
That's a great question. I think when we entered into the franchisor model, or the role of the franchisor, every major franchising system out there was like, come to our university. It's a 2-week university. And we're like, is that really how education works? It's 2 weeks and then you're good. So we chunk it down. What do you need to know? What do you need to be proficient at right now, 90 days before your studio opens up? What does your team need to be proficient at? How do we reinforce that? And those are just like the founding principles of the same thing I'm going to teach you when you're a brand new franchisee or a brand new team member are the same things I'm going to reinforce 2-3 years from now, because those are principles. And like tactics will change, but principles won't. The fundamentals will never change, right? Yep. But the tactics might change a little bit depending upon what the industry is shifting to and the consumer is shifting to.
And in the Good to Great book, written by Jim Collins, they talk about being brilliant at the basics. So brilliant at those fundamentals. Well,
think about it. As much as you love or hate the guy, Tom Brady, it's the fundamentals.
Yeah.
But like what makes the highlight reel are the one play out of a 60-minute game. The one play makes the highlight reel, but it was the blocking, it was the tackling, it was the handoff, the crisp, catch. Those are the fundamentals that don't make the highlight reels.
What was going through my head as you were talking about that was Karate Kid. The original one.
the only one. The only one.
Right. Not Jaden Smith version, but the original one. And Mr. Miyagi's like, wax the car, paint the fence. Like something like that. And to the point where Daniel LaRusso gets so pissed off that he's like, what are we doing? I'm just doing work in your house. And then he just goes into, basically tries to hit him, like paint the fence. Right? So it's brilliant at those basics, brilliant at the fundamentals is what he is being taught. So that's a great thought process. So we also talked about you guys, or you told me a story about going to that franchise show. What was it called?
It was just a franchise seminar, or a franchise, I think it was a trade show, where it was down in Chicago, and they wanted us to do a booth. And I said, Katie, why don't we just go check it out? Let's spend a weekend in Chicago, check it out. And it was really fascinating because it was brokers soliciting you to be a franchisee. And that's where we kind of got that, like, oh, is this the model that we're in? Because this isn't how we want to operate. But I won't forget it, because we knew every booth was at least $5,000 to $10,000 to be there. And the gal that was kicking everybody's ass was the frozen popsicle gal. She was like, hey, you want a frozen popsicle? And learn about my franchise. And she had 20, 30 people in her booth learning about how to do a popsicle franchise. But then Katie and I, we were there for 30 minutes. We got a feel for it. And we're like, okay, that's exactly the opposite of what we want the Orange Shoe franchise to be. Then that was, you can learn something to do, or you can learn something not to do from different organizations, different people. But you can always learn.
Yeah. So I want to be vulnerable with the audience and tell her. So I used to own an Anytime Fitness franchise, and this is how we got on the topic. So I said it was interesting to me to find out during the building process that Anytime Fitness had their hands in everything, from the security company, everything. And I was like, so are you allowed to pick your own subs? Because I was not when we built that out. and then come to find out that Anytime Fitness was getting spiff through each of those subs that we were forced to use. And so that's how we got onto that story. Was he said, there's a lot of unethical business. Now, I'm not saying that Anytime Fitness was unethical. That's their business model. It was surprising to me to learn as a franchisee that they weren't just getting it off our revenue or whatever percentage they're taking on revenue. When we build out, they're also earning money. And when we do anything, they're also earning money. It's like they've got their hands in everything, which makes them profitable as a company, which probably makes the investors happy and whatever it might be. But it was interesting to hear you guys take a different path and see that, this is what we're about. So what are those fundamentals or principles that you guys stand by after learning the path that you didn't want to go?
Is set people up to be successful. I mean, this is a long-term relationship. I'm not trying to make money on your build out or any of that kind of stuff. I'm not saying that's right or wrong. I'm just saying that's not what we believe in. So we're going to get new owners into their studios. We don't want them paying out of pocket for it. We want the landlord to pay out of pocket. We want to walk all the way through that forecasting tool and let them know that this is a forecasting tool. It may or may not look like this a year from now. But I learned that from other people that have gone before me. Just be transparent, be honest. And always allowing them opportunities to grow as an owner, whether it's a single owner, a multi, location owner. Don't stagnate their growth opportunities because you're going to repel the best talent.
Yeah.
If you don't allow them to grow.
Yeah.
And that's being vulnerable. That's being very transparent. That's, but in the same point we've had since we've taken over, we've added locations and had all the other locations renew their 10-year agreements. So I think that's resonating with the organization, and that's just looking for the bright spots.
Yeah.
So we'll double down on that going into the future.
So you told me your goal was for them not to have any debt going into it. Correct.
Because we had a lot of debt when we came into it. We had a facility, and you don't know what you don't know, but we had a facility that was 3 times too big. If you build it, they will come. And the only guarantee was that the rent payment had to be made every month. And that was about 4 times more than what the franchisees are paying right now for their rent. That was back in 2008, 2009. So what would that be like inflation, right? So, it's just do more with less until it stagnates you and be creative. I think that's just always taking a look at, just because everybody else is building big and fancy and, 2 years from now, it's going to be dusty. Let's not forget what really is unique and special. And that's the relationships. That's showing people how they can be successful. Not compared to what the magazine looks like or anything like that, but compared to themselves. Because I think if you get caught up in comparing abs or whatever that might be, cars, comparison's a thief of all joy and happiness. You're always going to have somebody that has something better. So let's just focus on you.
Yeah.
What fulfills you? What's your definition of success? And then that's where I'm going to align my energy and my talents to help you get there.
Oh, that's great. So to that vein, and I think you probably just answered it, but I'm going to ask anyhow, what makes Orange Shoe special versus all these other franchise fitness models?
It's interesting, and we're versatile. Our success isn't hinging on a piece of equipment. It's not hinging on a modality that is hot today and gone tomorrow. We can pivot when the industry pivots. We never wanted to be married to a bike or a treadmill or whatever that was, like a shake weight. We wanted to be married to the relationship, and that's a harder thing to develop. It's a harder thing. It's more dynamic, but when you can help people through stuff and understand what makes them tick, nobody expects to be a client at Orange Shoe for 5 years, 6 years. We're just like, hey, let's take the first month. Let's see how you like it. And then they're like, oh, I've been here for 5 years. And we don't lock anybody into any contracts or anything like that. Hey, I want to earn your business every month. And if I'm not, fire me. And so they can't even set up long-term contracts. Like anybody can fire us at the end of any month. And you know what? It keeps everybody on their A game.
Can you fire them?
We have.
All right, cool.
We have.
I think that's a two-way street and is important. That's why I want to make sure that you guys had that answer as well.
Yes. It's a handful of times over the year, I'm like, I'm going to lose a great team member because of this client. Here's your money back.
Yeah.
I'd rather keep the team member.
Yeah. Especially right now. It's so hard to find talent right now.
Everybody's in the same situation. It's fascinating. I think it's something that you always have to keep your eyes and ears open, because I was working at a factory before going into school to teach, and then I wanted to do more. I just didn't know the opportunities that were out there. So I think putting that out in front of people all the time, whether it's someone who's in the field already, somebody who maybe is in a physical therapy field, somebody who's just in high school and wants to get into this, how do I learn more? It's like you always have to be that resource for them to be able to help educate themselves on what this could be for themselves.
Yeah, that's so right. And keeping your talent beacons up and open at all times, because 85 studies were showing that 85% of people in the workforce are unhappy with their current employment.
Isn't that sad?
It's extremely sad. And then here's the other take on it, is like this war of talent for us as business owners right now is we're scheduling appointments for interviews, and people aren't showing up to them because the government only requires that you have proof of an interview on the calendar. You don't even have to show up. You just have to have proof that there was an interview scheduled on the calendar, and with whom.
That sounds like a whole separate podcast here, Josh.
Yeah, it is. But
it is fascinating because we're seeing it in Chicago. Restaurant industry, they're seeing the same thing too. Every industry.
They can't get people back to work in the restaurant and bar industry right now.
Yeah.
And that's really sad. And yeah, that is a separate episode. We could go off on the government and their lack of possible intelligence on what that is and whatnot.
I think the one thing too is, and maybe this is just like a leadership style, but I never wanted to get into the ivory tower. I want to know, and I know that's not where my value proposition is with the organization right now, but I still have clients. I'm still trying new things, and when you can talk shop with the highest performing trainer, that's a level of respect that you have throughout the organization. And Katie and I both never want to be so far removed from the reality of what makes the business successful that all of a sudden we're speaking a foreign language to the team that is really making the business successful. So,
and those are your boots on the ground, right? So you have to have some intertwine there. I read about the I can't remember his name, but the famous CEO of Costco that ran it for a while. He was on a plane almost every day and was going to a different Costco around the country, visiting and shaking hands and knowing what employees were going through, what they were seeing, what the trends were in those locations to make sure to continue to keep relevant and employee relations up, but talking to the boots on the ground to make sure that he had his pulse on the customer. Mm-hmm. So found that fascinating from such a corporation that's so vast, that's one of the things that's made them great over time.
Absolutely.
So with all that you guys have gone through, you guys took over, what was it, 07, 08, your first franchise that you guys owned?
The first so the Fitchburg location that we bought in, it was 2007. We were pregnant with our first daughter. It was, I told you this one, Chad. It was like a drug deal. I remember, and I have so much respect for Josh Martin just because I would never started the stuff that he had to go through just to get the first building. That would have deterred me. And because he did stuff like that, he laid the foundation for me to come in and just, pick up, 4 or 5 years after hard work that he's done. But I signed a bunch of papers on a Friday morning. I don't know what they were, and I didn't get copies. But we took all of our wedding money and some of Park Bank's money. Thank you, Park Bank. And gave him a manila envelope in the parking ramp before we went out for dinner someplace. And that's how we got started. We bought in a small percentage. It was a minority share. So we had no controlling interest whatsoever of that location. $0 in our bank account, plus Park Bank's money. And then we had a major complication with the pregnancy the next day. Like Katie almost passed away, and I was sleeping on the couch at St. Mary's Hospital for the next month. So when people are like, it has to be the right time, I'm like, well, let me tell you a story about the timing when we got started. Yeah. And then, we figured that out. It wasn't
by the way, that was right before the market crash.
And then we bought the remaining 75% 2 months before Bear Stearns and Lehman Brothers. And we were like, what does this all have to do with that? And we're like, we have clients freaking out, leaving sessions early. And we're like, this might be something that we have to deal with for a couple of years.
Yeah.
But you know what? If you don't have that support network, and we have amazing parents who helped us, and just like community members. I remember, Sean Cleary from Cleary Builders. I'm like a peon. I'm still a peon, And Sean, I heard him speak, and I go, "Hey, could we grab lunch together, Mr. Cleary?" And he did. And I just remember his passion, and I'm like, man, I just got to suck it up. I'm just being a wuss right now. But that was enough motivation, enough inspiration for me to get to the next 6 months or so. Yeah. And I still tell Sean that, I see him today. I go, "Hey, I really appreciate you taking that time out." I had people like Mike Suter, talk with me, tons of people in the community that they didn't have to do that. They're busy people. They have families. They have big businesses. And I'm just trying to figure out how to pay rent next month.
Yeah. Well, when you're that's interesting because, business owners or just any groups of people, you tend to migrate towards each other and support each other in tough time. And 08, 09 was an extremely tough time for business owners. So I think that's really cool that you found that, but also sought that out. If you didn't ask Sean, the answer is going to be no, right? I teach my advisors this all the time. If you don't ask, the answer is always no. I'm teaching my kids that right now. I think they're taking it a little too liberally, by the way.
I'm sure they're very good at asking. If they're anything like my kids, it's interesting because I think it's I'm sure it's like a cognitive bias, but so when we were in college, all my college roommates were like, "There's no way you're ever going to get a date with Katie Morschauser." I'm like, "Well, I don't have a date right now, so there's nothing for me to lose. Right. So I might as well just ask her for the next 2 years." And then she said yes once. And that was a while ago. Yeah. So I think it's like you don't have anything to lose. You don't have a lunch meeting with Sean Cleary already. So you only have the positive. Right. So I think that's framing it that way. And you talk to anybody who has done anything of significance, and they had to put themselves out there and step outside that comfort zone. Growth
lies within that.
It's the only way you grow.
Yeah. And that's I think most people don't think about is there is no neutral. You're either moving forward or you're moving backwards. So my dad always put it to me like a nursery rhyme. You're either green or growing or ripe and rotting. And that's just beaten into my head. But really nowadays, it's more like, look, there is no neutral. You're either going forward or you're going backwards.
Yeah, because time is the equalizer.
Right. But how often do people just sit in neutral, or thinking about that decision, thinking about, Sean's so busy, he probably doesn't have time for me. And I guarantee you had all those thoughts, but something tipped you to say, I'm going to go ask.
I think... it's still a challenge because you're like, I have so many priorities. And then I'm like, whoa, that's supposed to be a singular word. I should have one priority. What is the biggest thing that I need to invest my time and resources into to move the needle forward? Whether that's with my own health and wellness, with relationships, with business, family. It's never a ton of things. It's always like the big thing that you should be devoting your time and resources to, and then making sure that you actually follow through on that and having the accountability built in to help you do that.
Absolutely. So I'm just thinking here, we're talking about a lot of really good stuff, but I'm also thinking about your guys' vision. So you have 11 right now. Where is Orange Shoe 10 years from now?
I can tell you very clearly where Orange Shoe is 10 years from now. We have an army of leaders, for lack of better terms. It was never meant to be just Scott and Katie. That's very limited thinking. We want the top performing franchisees to be part of the entire organization and lead the ship, whether that's 20 locations or 100 locations. I've never even fixed on a number. It's the people that, the quality of that, not necessarily the quantity. I know Katie really wants to get to 20 because from our understanding, that's hard to do. To go from 5 or 6 to 10 to 20. And according to all the mail that we received, once we opened up our 10th one, there must be some magic number at 10 because you get a lot of solicitations once you get to 10. But for
as far as buyouts and
angel investors, I'm like, what? These aren't even real people. I'm pretty sure. But
they are.
I'm sure they are, but I'm sure that there's lots of fine print that goes along with it. But no, I tell our owners this all the time. We want to make sure that you're very successful in your studios, wherever that, I'm not going to force a certain revenue on somebody. If their definition of success is this is where they're at, then awesome. But when they reach certain parameters, I want them to have ownership in the entire organization. I think that's something unique, to have somebody coming into the fitness industry as a trainer who can progress up into an ownership or a managing partner role, and then eventually be at the head table. And then there's no limits. Mm-hmm. You meet certain frameworks, like we can all just build a bigger table, shall we? Mm-hmm. So
yeah, no, that's great. And what does that look like as far as your army of leaders? Maybe that's the vision. Is how does that shape up?
They're already in the organization. We had a little bit of a hiccup called COVID that we had to navigate through and really tread water through, but we were all able to make it through. And I look at it from the standpoint of, now it's laying out the foundation and saying, this is where your business is. Why did you start the business? What do you want from the business? Was it just to be busy, or was it to be able to allow you to do other things? Was it allow you to be able to empower your team to move up and grow themselves professionally and personally? What do you want to do with that? And then from there, being like, obviously there's numbers. I mean, this isn't just like, pie in the sky, everybody sings Kumbaya. But when they hit certain metrics, it's like, okay, now we're going to do, a revenue share of the entire organization. And, I heard this, Josh said it this way. He's like, would you rather have 100% of a small pie, or would you rather have 25% of a huge pie? And I'm like, well, let's get baking. Let's make some big pies. And I think that's maybe the thing is I don't find success in keeping everything for myself. I want it to flow through us. I want it to be able to impact other people and influence other people. But no, I don't need to keep it all for myself. I think that's very limited thinking.
Yeah, no, it's good. It is very limited, and it's also lonely.
I think, yes. I think that's it is very lonely.
So, and I think that's what's really cool about you and Katie working together so well. And I asked her this about your top qualities. So I'll ask you, what are Katie's top qualities?
She's passionately aggressive. We were talking about this before, and we go into a new build out and we go together, and it's typically what our experiences have been. It's typically a male dominated construction crew, mm-hmm. and they come right for me, and I'm like, nope, she's the one in charge. Because she grew up in the construction family. I can't even draw is a right angle. How many degrees does that have?
90.
Yeah. Okay. Gotcha. And she's like, no, you guys, what the, and she's talking shop with the guys, and I'm over here go get them. Yeah, this is awesome. Where are we going for lunch? And it's just, it works. It's not like we're trying to set people up or anything, but they always come to me. And I'm like, no, I can't even draw a box. She's the one that's going to, and she's drawn all the gyms. She's like, you want to do curved walls? I can see why you want to do curved walls, because you're going to charge us more. No, we're going to do straight walls, and we don't even need all the walls. Put a urinal in the bathroom? Why? That's stupid. And that's the conversation she has. So it's fun. We get them built out. They are very efficient. They're pretty. They have that. They're clean, and they can make money. Because if you can't make money in business, well, then you're not around to be able to help people.
Oh, that's great. So passionately aggressive. I think the word you used earlier was ball buster, but
yes, that could be another way of phrasing it.
But that's great. So, has there been a point for you guys where, and I think I asked her this as well, but anything? What's the most difficult thing about working with your spouse, and the best thing about working with your spouse?
I think the most difficult thing is that to set up the boundaries. When the kids get off the school bus, you got to shut it down, because I'm going to be a horrible spouse. I'm going to be a horrible dad, and it doesn't feel good either way. I'm a horrible business owner. Mm-hmm. So just letting people know, hey, sorry, if the gym's on fire, what am I going to do about it? Call the fire department. But the thing that's nice is that we have so much, it's not like we come from separate worlds, mm-hmm. Which can be a challenge too sometimes. But, we're talking about, hey, this is what we're excited about. What'd you do? I did this. Awesome. You did that. Cool. But to be completely honest, the first 4 years of owning the franchise, it was kind of muddy. Like, what are you in charge of? Where's your skill set? What's mine? Well, you lead this way. I lead this way. I'm a little bit more, we've had a lot of personality profiles done on us. And the best way this was explained to me by an individual, Katie's going to get from point A to point B, and there's going to be casualties. Scott comes behind, picks everybody up, and like, hey, put a little Band-Aid on that. You're good to go. Let's go. We're going to get it. Move forward. And that's how we work. And we've figured out how to make that work with our owners and with new locations as well.
Oh, that's cool. That's really cool. So, Chad and you talked about ethical entrepreneurship, and I think we talked a little bit about this with going through the franchise trade show that you went through and whatnot, but is there anything else there that you want to touch on as far as what that means to you and what that means to Orange Shoe?
I think ethical entrepreneurship, it's just being as transparent as you can be and, not holding back anything. When I say like, hey, if we're not if we're not valuable to you next month, just fire us, please. We're not in the business of taking people's money. And that goes with our clients, that goes with our franchisees. But I think that I've talked to my kids about this. I go, if you ever don't tell the truth, and that is not just telling a lie, but not telling the truth at the same point, like it eventually gets flushed out.
Yeah.
And when you're in business, you won't be in business any longer. I don't care how big the city is. Like that is always going to get flushed out. And we've seen this in other business owners throughout our time where maybe it wasn't a lie, but it was definitely a bend in the reality.
Yeah. And
it always surfaces. And then that's the only thing you really own. I mean, you own your attitude and your actions, but then your reputation. Yeah. So I just, whether it's a client that, hey, they were gone last month for, vacation and they have 10 extra sessions. Could I bill you again? I guess I could because you're on auto bill, but I'm going to pause your account and let you catch up. And then people are like, oh, you already took care of that for me? Thanks. And that's how you build trust and respect. And you do that over and over and over again.
Yeah. And you guys are in constant contact with your clients.
Yes.
Why?
It's, we have 2 interns from UW, and I had them run this, go back to all the new client profiles for the last 4 months. The number one challenge people are keeping them, what they feel keeping them from accomplishing their health and wellness is accountability. Well, how can I hold you accountable if I don't have a relationship with you? You can't. Because
we talk about that all the time, is if you, accountability without a relationship is nothing more than harassment.
Yeah. You're absolutely right. So it's something that I know that, it's cool to be able to say you have 3,000 members and you pray to God they don't all show up on Saturday morning. But we've always just been like, hey, we don't need to have the most members or clients in town. We just want to have the right relationships, and we want to be valuable to people, 5 years from now. And that very well will change what that looks like. It's changing right now from not just necessarily always having to come to the studio, but hey, we can do things with you. We can make bigger impacts with you outside of the studio, just as much as inside the studio.
Yeah. That's great. And the reason I went down that path is, most gyms count on paying members that don't show up.
It is one of our pet peeves. And unfortunately, then it makes the consumer feel bad about themselves because they're not using something they paid for. And they look at it as it's another thing I tried and I failed at. And It's like, it was never set up for you to succeed. That's my industry, So it's really challenging our industry to up their game and just kind of, set a higher level of expectations.
Well, I think that it's built through community as well, right?
Mm-hmm.
So like the big box gym, and nothing wrong with those either, because they all serve their place for the certain consumer. Like I can't show up and play a full court basketball game at your place, right?
Nope.
The big box gym you can. So they all have a certain place. So I don't want anyone to think that like we're talking badly or anything about anyone. It's more or less a time and place for everything. But the community that either an Orange Shoe or Carbon, where I go, or Peloton is building a community that rallies around each other and creates accountability, right?
Yeah.
So what have you, because it's kind of taken the world by storm over the last year, the Peloton community. What have you noticed that similarities or differences about the community that you guys have built?
The first and foremost, I never get into like a whizzing match on how people choose to move or exercise or any of that. I think if you're moving, that's awesome. Keep it up. It's not going to be the right fit for everybody. Just like orange shoes not the right fit for everybody. Peloton's not going to be the right fit for everybody. Big boxes aren't going to be the right fit for everybody. The last stat that came out from MindBody Online, which is our scheduling and point of sales software, 4 out of 5 Americans don't even move regularly on a weekly basis. Not belong to a gym. They don't even move.
What's the definition of move regularly?
30 minutes.
Per day?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like go for a walk for 30 minutes.
Yeah. And that's on our Apple Watches, right? I'm pointing at my watch like I'm wearing an Apple Watch, which I'm not. But anyhow, that's on our, whether it's Fitbit, Apple Watch, whatever, that's that move meter is at least 30 minutes.
Yeah. So it's interesting. Like the fitness industry is like, oh no, we have this like patented trademark push-up that protocol that nobody else knows. And it's like, come on, you guys, like it's limited thinking. It's stagnant thinking. Like 80% of people aren't even moving. And here we're trying to like, hoard this section of people. There's more people that need help than what we can ever service. So let's get out of our own little limited scarcity mindset and let's get out there and start helping people. And it might be at a $29 a month rate. It might be at a $800 a month rate. I think that you own as a human being, you should be able to be educated on how to be able to take care of yourself from health and wellness. Mm-hmm. It should not be reserved for the elitists. It should not be reserved for, reactive health and medicine. You should be able to take a proactive stance, have a human being that stands behind it with their degree and their education, the continuing education, and be able to empower you to be able to say, hey, my shoulder's not feeling right. How do I work that? And not have to go to Google and YouTube and try to figure out what's real and what's not real. I don't think that should, be limited.
Now that was really powerful right there because it shouldn't. And we're in the information age. And it's like,
but it's so much information that's not even valuable.
Correct. We're in the information age. So how do you decipher the right information?
Anybody that's going to stand behind it and actually eyeball you up.
Yeah.
Like if I tell you something and it didn't work, I'll be the first one to take ownership of it. We're like, let's do something else. And when people do take ownership over their actions and, hey, this didn't work the way I thought it was going to work, I'm going to go back to the drawing board. I'm going to go back to my mad scientist lab and we're going to figure something that works better for you. Does that sound good?
Yeah.
And people are like, oh my gosh, like this person's going to be here. We just had a meeting. I won't say we did a little bit of a partnership with Food Fight and Cento. And I told Monty, I said, hey, this is something I want to be able to do. I want to be able to say, hey, this is the 15th annual Forage in the Forest with Cento and Orange Shoe for Morel mushrooms. And I don't want this to be like something that we just do once. I want this to be something that I'm going to reinforce 4, 5, 6, 7 years from now and build off from it. Like, why do these one-trick ponies? Like, I want to have something that has substance. And they sold out 4 nights of these $150 plate Morel mushrooms. They sold out in 24 hours. And we're like, cool, now we got to go find these things.
Yeah. So you had to backfill into that one. Hopefully you found enough.
The season isn't open yet, but I have my sources.
Okay, good. Got enough acreage with backed by Ithaca?
Oh, yeah. There's a little over 330 acres to go. But I have a bunch of people who I can tap into too.
Is there a particular skill set in identifying where and how to find Morel mushrooms?
South-facing slopes typically get the more sun, and then you're looking for dead elms. They'll pop up anywheres, but it's just a lot of walking. I mean, you might get lucky and get a 5-pound batch all at once, or you might walk for 3-4 hours and come back with nothing.
Yeah.
That's why they call it hunting and not grocery shopping.
Yeah. And you're getting people to get their 30 minutes minimum that day.
They will definitely get 30 minutes and they'll get a beautiful hike and we'll have some fun. Maybe catch some rainbow trout out of the pond and do some ranger rides and stuff like that.
Oh, that's cool. So that's awesome. All right. Well, we want to make sure that we respect your time. We got a hard cut off here. Let's get into the word game. I'm going to ask you the same words that Katie was asked last week. So we're going to get 2 different side-by-side responses to these words. So there's no right or wrong to the words, like I said. And for anyone that's listening for the first time, our word game is I'm going to ask Scott or just say a word, and Scott's going to give his first response, gut response, either single word or maybe a short phrase. But no explanation needed. We just want to hear your gut response to these words, just as we did to Katie. Now, she did a really good job.
I'm sure she did. I'm sure she did.
But really, there is no good or bad job. I'm just giving you crap because really it's your gut response to these words. Ready to go?
Absolutely.
All right. Action.
Now.
Love.
Always.
Fitness.
Journey.
Life.
Enjoy the ride.
Death.
Inevitable.
Energy.
Use it wisely.
Failure.
Inevitable.
Success.
Priority.
Inspire.
Parents.
Impact.
Influence.
Awesome. I don't know who did a better job. Those are good.
Those are tough.
And I didn't even say, I said to you before, but part of the word game is you can't repeat yourself, and Scott did not repeat himself. So we did good. Good job. Those are great. Great responses. So, it is fun. Chad did that to me as we're standing out on the patio behind you. We're smoking a cigar, and he's like, all right, we're going to do this. And I said, okay. It's like the end of the day, right? And we're going to do this. So I had to put my thinking cap back on. But it was fun. So we've integrated into the podcast ever since. And it's been really fascinating to get people's responses to it.
I've never done that before. It was fun.
Yeah. Well, now you have to try it. Maybe it'll be part of your interviews for your franchisees going forward.
We'll have to run that past HR.
All right. So I always ask for either favorite book of all time or one you most recently read that knocked your socks off you want to give a shout out to.
I'm just looking at your bookcase back there.
Well, that's just part of them. The real bookcase is at home, but that was the last 12 to 18 months of stuff behind me.
It's Chip and Dan Heath are some of my favorite authors. And they wrote a book called Moments. And it's not like a business book or anything like that. But when you look at it, it's how to create moments. Like you go on vacation with your family, you're not going to script out like, this is when we're going to take those pictures and we're going to have this moment. It happens organically, but you put yourself in a position to have that happen.
Well, that's cool.
And Katie and I took some clients out for dinner one night, and we like to do this. We just asked them like, hey, what's your definition of success? Because out of all these successful people, nobody said, oh, this much money in my bank account. Not one. But what they said is you know what? It's relationships and the experiences that we share with those relationships, which is moments. So yeah, and that's what we really strive to do, with everybody is how do we create those moments or put ourselves in a position to create those moments with the people that we care about.
Yeah. Or said differently, just experiences, like different experiences that you can look back on, because when you do different experiences, it creates a new memory versus the same experience may create a repeated one that just blends together all of a sudden. Absolutely.
So, so we're going to have some fun with this with Talha. We always take the new owners out for a nice dinner, and he won't listen to this. I don't think so before we do this, but then I'm going to have a huge silver platter come out. And when the waiter opens up the silver platter, there's going to be a bright pair of orange shoes. This is his first pair of orange shoes as a new owner.
That's great.
So like everybody in the restaurant's going to be like, what the hell is that? And then it's going to be shoes. Yeah. So it's just like fun stuff like that. Life's too short not to be able to create stuff like that when you have the opportunity.
Well, we had a guest on, Lonnie Main, who was a great episode, and he created the Red Shoe Living. And it's just living through experiences and creating special standout experiences for business partners or just in life, is just continuing to show up differently, right? So you could start the orange shoe side of things.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Bright orange versus the bright red. And don't worry, he's not in the fitness industry, so it won't compete against you.
That sounds good. That sounds good.
But any favorite podcasts that you listen to?
I'm on Jocko right now quite a bit.
Jocko Willings.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Like I'm actually on his Underground podcast, and it's interesting because I think everything rises and falls with training. I mean, you would like to think that you rise to the occasion. No, you fall back on your level of training.
Yep.
And I think if you were to ask entrepreneurs or business owners or even like, employees, like, hey, do you have a development plan for your leadership skills? Nobody does. And Jocko just keeps it real. He keeps it simple. And you hear some of those stories of, things that he had to go through, the things that he had to see. And you know what? Your worst day in the office isn't that bad anymore. Mm-hmm. So it just keeps things in perspective for me.
Yeah, for sure. And both his books were great as well. Extreme Ownership. Well, actually, he has more than that now, but Extreme Ownership and Dichotomy of Leadership.
I read The Warrior Kid. I had my twins read The Warrior Kid, which is like his children's book, which is, there weren't enough pictures in the books for my kids. Interestingly
enough, speaking of it, there's a book called A Book Without Pictures.
Oh, yeah, my twins would not like that one.
Well, here's the funny thing is I read it to my 7-year-old last night. She gave it to me, and it's written by B.J. Novak, who is one of the producers or co-executive producers of The Office.
Okay.
And he also was in the show, because a lot of them were. Mindy Kaling being another one that was also in the show and also a producer. And it's great. It like makes you, the parent reading it, do a bunch of goofy things, like make a bunch of goofy sounds, and makes your kid laugh, and there's no pictures in it. And then it basically ends by giving your kid a compliment by saying, your kid picked out this book, they're extra special, and blah, blah, blah. Like it was cute. So they may like it, especially if you're reading it, making a bunch of goofy noises and sounds.
I'm going to go down a little bit of a rabbit hole with you on that one, Josh. So James, one of our twins, he's like, there's just no good books in the library. I go, James, Extreme Ownership, Default Aggressive. What are you going to do about that, buddy? Why don't you write a book? Like, someone's got to write a book. Why is it always somebody else? He's like, I can do that. I go, I'll help you. Like, let's get your writing table set up in your bedroom. Like, what are you going to write about? He's like, I'm going to write about aliens. I'm like, that's pretty good. He's like, can I do it on my school computer? I'm like, well, yeah, you can. He's like, I don't want to. I go, why? He's like, because the school will steal my idea. But we've always kind of gone through that with, in a lot of different phases of our life is like, why somebody else? Why not us?
Yeah.
Why not me? Everybody puts their pants on one leg at a time. Why not us? Yeah. How did somebody else do it? How can we do that if that's within our values? So,
yeah. No, it's a great principle for teaching the kids, because it's teaching them to think outside the box. It's teaching them ownership and being able to do it. And who knows, it may turn into a bestseller, or it may spark the idea to become a best-selling author someday.
It's fun. It's just fun to be able to plant the Trojan horse.
Yeah, exactly. So how does the audience get in touch, follow you if they want to become a franchisee someday? What's the best way to follow Orange Shoe and all the happenings?
They can message me on LinkedIn. They can. I would love to say that I'm on the gram, I'm on the Facebook, but I'm just not. Like, if they want to shoot me a text, they can shoot me a text. You can leave that in the show notes. Yeah. But I kind of like to live my life a little bit more off the radar. And but if someone wants to get in touch with me, if they really want to get in touch with me,
go to the website and
just shoot me an email or my phone number's on my signature. So.
Awesome. Well, great. It's been a pleasure having both you and Katie in here. It's been a lot of fun to learn about the relationship. I told Katie this. I was like, hey, I would never be able to work with my wife, and that's 100% my fault. Like, I know I would screw up those boundaries. So I really applaud you guys and your working relationship, the successful business you guys have built and are continuing to build. I know it's just the beginning. So thank you for sharing with our audience and being here.
Absolutely. It was my pleasure.
All right. Well, as our audience, as you go on about your week, make sure you continue to have a positive impact on people's lives. Until next time, we'll see you then.